Drama is a big part of the X-Men, and often this extends to their bizarre and wild romances. If you think Magneto and Rogue is a weird ship, wait till you hear about some of these. So this is a weird one because before Amanda Sefton was known as Amanda Sefton, she was Jermaine Zardos, the sister of Nightcrawler. Admittedly, his adopted sister, as Nightcrawler was not born into the Zardos family, but was merely taken in and raised by them. But still, pretty weird considering where we're about to go. Even weirder, Jermaine had apparently always been in love with her brother, and when he was accused of murdering their other brother, Stefan, Jermaine refused to accept that Kurt had done so in cold blood because of her feelings for him. She sought Kurt out to find out what was really going on. In truth, Kurt had killed Stefan, but only because Stefan had at an earlier time basically made Kurt promise to do so if Stefan ever became too dangerous, so hence why he had to do it. Jermaine disguised herself as Amanda Sefton and did her best to make sure no one would recognize her, not even her brother Kurt. This plan miraculously worked, and Amanda began to investigate and also date her adopted brother. This kind of relationship has to be up there with one of the weirdest types for me in comics. What makes a relationship weird for you? Let me know in the comments. While these two never fully ended up together, Loki did consider that Storm might make a great queen to stand by his side as he ruled Asgard. He tricks her into joining his guard by giving her Stormcaster and restoring her powers, making her the new goddess of thunder, someone who can rival his brother, Thor. Storm almost fully joins Loki, but ultimately rejects him after discovering that something is amiss and that she has basically been manipulated. Yeah. In the end, she ends up joining up with her fellow X-Men to, of course, defeat Loki. Storm really doesn't like being manipulated, but then again, who does? I mean, I have to talk to you about this one. I don't have a choice really. It's just so bizarre when you just break it down in terms of what this relationship is. So let me break it down for you. Madeline Pryor is the clone of Jean Grey, created by Mr. Sinister so that he could engineer the perfect mutant offspring after Jean's apparent death. Cyclops would meet Maddie and fall in love with her because, well, she reminded him of Jean, although for some reason no one ever thought this was super suspicious or weird, that she was basically a one-for-one copy of Jean in regards to her appearance at least. Just a coincidence, they thought. Nothing to worry about, they thought. Well, it turns out it was something to worry about when Jean Grey reappeared after Scott and Maddie had their first child together and Cyclops decided to basically leave his family to just go adventuring with his fellow mutants once more. This ended up driving Maddie crazy, unlocking her true psionic potential and causing her to make a deal with demons. Yeah, she made a deal with literal demons. She would go on to have an affair with Scott's brother, Havoc, who also has had a very complicated relationship with Madeline Pryor over the years, and become an extremely dangerous and powerful supervillain. So, not your typical fairy tale ending here. This relationship comes to us from the alternate Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Beast and Storm dated for a while here, but their relationship was cut short by Beast dying. A strange, recurring thing in Storm's romantic life, actually. Quite a few of the people she has dated, on a multiversal scale at least, have ended up dead, oddly. So I guess watch your back if you're dating Storm, maybe. Professor X and Mystique have often been presented as foes and even sometimes allies or childhood friends in the comics. Mystique's origins are actually still quite mysterious. We know a lot about her, but we don't know exactly how old she is or even all the things she has done in her lifetime. We do know, however, that she was married to Professor X, and while under the guise of Moira McTaggart, had his son. I would be almost willing to accept this random happenstance of romance had it actually been explained in the comics, but it's really not. It's referenced in Uncanny X-Men and Battle of the Atom, where we meet Charles Xavier II, their son, but that's pretty much it. Husk and Angel are a couple that I honestly have a lot of feelings about. The weirdest part of their relationship is that most people point to the implied age difference here. Warren is a full-on adult and one of the original X-Men members, which makes him seemingly pretty old, whereas Husk is a teenager. I think she was just 19 or 18, so I mean technically she is an adult, sure, but she's still pretty young, she's still a teenager. There's also the fact that Husk was this weird rebound for Angel where he claimed he was like, he's gonna love her forever, but it didn't really last past Chuck Austin's run and has never really come up since. When Husk and Angel got together, Angel had just gotten out of a lengthy relationship with Betsy Braddock, who was going by Psylocke at that time. It was an awkward relationship, and if you don't believe me, take a look at the time Husk and Angel made up after an argument by getting intimate in the sky right above Paige's mom and the X-Men. Yikes. Imagine looking up and seeing that. It'd be so weird. When Doom and Arcade kidnap some X-Men in order to force them to visit Murder World, Arcade's twisted amusement park, Dr. Doom decides to use this opportunity opportunity to have a dinner date with Storm. Honestly, can I blame him? Not really. The crazy thing is that sparks seem to be flying between these two. I mean, Dr. Doom is pretty smooth and powerful and is the well-loved leader of an entire nation, Latveria, so I kinda get it. And he is confident as heck, which seems to honestly be a thing that Storm is often attracted to in the comics. However, this romance quickly comes to an end after Doom makes it known that he is also, willing to kill Aurora if necessary. Nothing will spoil the mood like that revelation. He incites her wrath after he encases her in chrome to create a Storm statue and to spare her the ravages of age. Literally a quote from the comic. Excuse me, Victor? What? Juggernaut isn't a mutant and is usually more often thought of as an X-Men villain, sure, but he has also teamed up with the X-Men in the past, even sometimes seeing eye to eye with his stepbrother Charles Xavier, though usually that's not the case between the two siblings, historically. She-Hulk, however, is not a mutant or an X-Men, but she is an acclaimed hero, which is one of the things that makes this relationship, honestly kinda weird. Well, that and the fact that it was a super random hookup. It all went down in Uncanny X-Men issue number 435 when She-Hulk was representing Juggernaut. This ship was considered so abhorrent that years later She-Hulk denied that it ever happened. Yeah. In the 2005 She-Hulk series in issue number 21, it was actually retconned that the version of She-Hulk who had done the deed with Kane had actually been an alternate version of her character from Earth 721, who had been on vacation on Earth 616 and was impersonating her 616 counterpart. So we wrote it out of the continuity, but there's still that page if you want to look at it. If you thought Paige and Warren were weird, I have one that's somehow even a bit weirder. I know. Stacy X is a mutant who can affect the way you feel, making you feel nauseous, dizzy, or even really good using pheromones. She worked for a time at a house of pleasure, using her mutant powers to, well, please people. Her work was attacked by an anti-mutant group and burnt to the ground. So Stacy X decided, reluctantly at first, to join up with the X-Men who had helped to confront the group that had targeted her workplace. She ended up developing a pretty epic crush on Angel, to the point that although she knew he was already taken, she sent him a video of her jumping rope naked. Yeah, pretty wild. Wild enough that I honestly just had to mention it here, so there you go. More of a moment in the comics than a full-blown romance, but still, these two together were a weird time, especially considering that Gambit is often seen as the true love of Rogue, and Mystique is, of course, Rogue's mother. Already we got a super weird scene where a mutant student of Gambit's known as Fox approaches him in the showers, attempting to seduce him. Gambit manages, though it seems honestly just barely, to resist her charms, and this is already awkward enough as this is, a student-teacher relationship, so yeah, it's really weird. But it's made even weirder when we then learn that Mystique had actually infiltrated the Xavier school under the guise of, you guessed it, Fox. Mystique later claims to have done this in an attempt to protect her daughter against Gambit, whom she basically didn't think was good enough. But I gotta be honest, trying to seduce your daughter's partner to prove that he's not good enough seems like a really weird attempt at protecting her. No wonder Rogue is always getting mad at her adoptive mama Mystique for meddling. Like, I'd be like, what is even going through your mind right now, Mystique? I need you to just stop. It's a lot. Number 10. Sync and Monet. Sync and Monet met at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. The two students developed feelings for one another and began dating. Monet was actually very guarded still around the other mutants when it came to her abilities. The only person she ever seemed to be comfortable around at the time was Sync. The two's romance was brief, however, ending almost as soon as it had started, as Everett Thomas passed away, using his powers to sync with Monet and take on her powers so that he could protect human students of the school that he was near from bombs that had been placed in the school by Emma's evil sister, Adrienne, which exploded. Although he was able to protect the other students, he was not able to protect himself and died from his injuries. Sync has since been resurrected and resurfaced in Dawn of X on Krakoa, where Monet also is. She helped in the mission to destroy the Mother Mold, but we have yet to see these two rekindle their high school flames since Sync's first death. Actually, I don't think we've really seen them interact yet, so see how that goes when they do. Though of course nothing will happen because nothing ever officially happens in Dawn of X, it's all subtext. It's all in the subtext. Sexy, sexy subtext. Number 9. Beast and Abigail Brand. While Abigail Brand might not be considered an X-Men, she is still a mutant, and Beast is certainly an X-Men. He's been around for a real long time with the X-Men. Abigail first confessed that she had feelings for Beast near the end of the Joss Whedon run on Astonishing X-Men, also revealing that she was a mutant as well. From there, these two would date, and Abigail has even let it slip that she would like to have children with big bouncing blue Beast. They'd have big bouncing, probably green babies. Green furry babies. Number 8. Fantomex and Psylocke. These two have always had a strange relationship because it was one that no one really expected to happen. A lot of people still enjoyed it though because Psylocke and Fantomex are both really cool, badass characters, and they're both comic book hotties. And when people are both cool, we figured that's a good enough reason to ship them sometimes, so I think that's sort of where this relationship came from. After a bit of flirting in Volume 1 of Uncanny X-Men, it was later established that these two cared deeply for one another. Psylocke even met Fantomex's mom, and later it was revealed that Weapon 13, which is kind of an AI mind that is also a part of Fantomex, was deeply in love with Psylocke, so the three agreed to become one, in a romantic sense. Weapon 13, Fantomex, and Psylocke. It's a triad thing. Fantomex is weird. He is both an AI living within him and a ship for a nervous system that are both part of him, but he's also as amazing as he is complex, so there you go. Sorry if I didn't explain Fantomex completely right. He is a very confusing dude. Still love him though, still excited for that giant size. Giant size Fantomex, it's gonna happen. Number 7. Kitty Pryde and Star-Lord. These two first met and worked alongside each other in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, where both the Guardians and the X-Men worked together to get a young Jean Grey back from the Shi'ar. At the end of the adventure, Star-Lord gave Kitty a holographic phone so they could keep in touch. Ooh. Their romance began to blossom as they continued to contact one another just to chat. Eventually, they were trying to date long distance, and when Peter was kidnapped during one of their long distance dates, Kitty showed up, all the way from Earth, to rescue him. Aww. From then on, they were officially a thing. The two continued to see one another and were even engaged for a time. Kinda like them together too. I just feel like they're both kind of free spirits, they're both cool people. Number 6. Rogue and Deadpool. In a strange but kinda sweet turn of events, these two hooked up during their time together in the Uncanny Avengers in Volume 3 of the series. The two hook up after dealing with Red Skull. It seems that both members of the team had actually had a thing for one another. Wade confesses that although he's always liked Rogue, he hasn't spoken up because he wanted to protect her, but she pushes the issue, telling him that she doesn't need protection. Love when Rogue gets sassy with people. The whole thing is actually pretty sweet though. Even though I'm a long time fan of Gambit and Rogue being together and I heavily ship that, I really liked this little momentary hookup. Later on, Rogue would sassily tell Gambit, who complained about the whole thing and how everyone called to tell him that she kissed Deadpool when they finally got back together for a mission. They were not dating at the time, by the way. That she didn't just kiss Deadpool, she made out with him, and she even insinuated that he was a better kisser than Remy. Ooh. Number 5. Iceman and Pyro. Kind of the ultimate couple in a way. While Jean and Emma may be seen as the ultimate fire and ice, they have nothing on Pyro and Iceman. These two literally are fire and ice. They ended up together in X-Men Gold. Iceman officially came out of the closet a few years back, which later resulted in these two having a fling. I should clarify as well that this was Simon Lasker Pyro. Still, I wish we had got to see more of these two together. I also just like that one comes from the Brotherhood and the other is from Charles's team, although this was during Simon's redemption time, so he wasn't really a bad guy anymore. Originally, actually, Bobby was the one who was skeptical about letting him join the Xavier Institute, but I guess he had a change of heart because they hooked up. Number 4. All the mutants? Okay, so hear me out. With Dawn of X being what it is and the nation of Krakoa emerging out of it, and with all of mutantkind coming together and so much vagueness surrounding who is with who right now, there seems to be a lot of evidence pointing towards the idea that Krakoa is just all about free love. No one has been explicitly tied to anyone, and yet all history is acknowledged, and so in a way it seems like almost everyone is tied to everyone. It just makes me think that there's a lot more partner swapping than ever happening on Krakoa, where no one really seems to even be fully partnered. Like everyone holds each other's hands and everybody's touching each other, and what's happening? After all, other than returning those fallen mutants that they have lost, the first law on Krakoa is to make more mutants. And I feel like they mean this in more ways than just one. That's right, people making babies on Krakoa. I said it. We haven't seen it, but I think it's happening. It's all happening off panel. I can't handle all the sexy subtext. I have so many thoughts in my brain. Number 3, Wolverine and Cyclops. Okay, so while this has never been confirmed as an official thing, in Krakoa there's been a lot of interesting flirty signals between these two. While they've always been rivals, they have also just as often been colleagues and great friends. But in the Dawn of X relaunch, via subtext we get some hints that there might be more going on here. In the new giant-size Jean and Emma comic, these two both seem pretty pally while they're waiting for Jean and Emma to uncover what was wrong with Storm. They sat close together, shoulder to shoulder, smelling flowers, and while it seems like Jean and Scott are one big happy family right now on Krakoa in the newest X-Men series out of 2019, issue number 7, we see that Wolverine appears to be staying with the couple at the summer house. When Logan confides that he didn't sleep great to Scott, Scott responds saying that he understands what that is like for Logan, with all the hair and dealing with being both too hot and then too cold, with and without covers, as though he's shared a bed with Logan before. This is like a weird thing to know about someone. Then they talk about Logan potentially joining him and Jean and the kids on a vacation. While Logan seems excited at the prospect of Jean in a bikini, he also seems somewhat interested at the idea of Scott in a Speedo. Well, there's always been some weird love triangle involving these two and Jean. In Dawn of X, it seems ever more prominent. So I think they might be together in some kind of strange triad. I'm for it. I ship it. I like it. Number 2, Emma Frost and Jean Grey. Emma and Jean just recently had their giant size together, which by the way was one of the prettiest comics I have ever read. I know it's early, but there is already talk of it being considered one of the most beautiful comic issues out of this year. Shout out to Russell Dodderman for this amazing art, by the way. So alongside this comic being gorgeous, the story was also compelling, and in it we got hints of just where these two ladies might be at in their relationship. Jean and Emma have always been seen as opposites, and have spent a lot of time in the comics arguing over Scott. But even though they're opposite in a lot of ways, they're also similar in a lot of ways. And in Dawn of X, it seems like they're ready to bury the hatchet, and maybe even all be in a relationship with Scott? Jean and Emma have some really intimate touches in their giant size, and have had some playful banter surrounding a compliment that Jean gives to Emma on her shoes. All in all, nothing is explicitly said here, but like with Logan and Scott, there is a lot of subtext between these two ladies. And I just feel like maybe there's something happening with them and Scott too? I don't know. And then like, do these two triangles overlap? Is it just one big circle? What's happening? I'm into it. I'm just, what's going on? Number 1, Cable and X-23. In volume 2 of Fallen Angels, these two have been playing the flirting game pretty ferociously. And while kind of a weird pairing, I like them together. It's also kind of cute that they are both offspring of two other often rivals and kind of besties, Logan and Scott. It only makes their whole potential relationship cuter. These two are constantly watching out for one another, and when they join Psylocke's team of butterflies in Fallen Angels, Laura Kinney originally doesn't even want Nathan on the team. She's worried for his safety, revealing that she cares about him, although she pretends she's not interested in him. Just cute. I'd be interested to see the going-ons between these two off panel.
Starting us off in at number 10, Rogue and Magneto. Once upon a time, in the Age of Apocalypse timeline, Rogue and Magneto got hitched, and it was super weird. This isn't just some rant against ageism here either, people. Think about this relationship for a second. Magneto was pretty darn cruel with Rogue during her time in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Generally, he has been a bit of a dick to her whenever they've interacted, and he always tried to exploit her powers, so it does feel weird for a character like Rogue to diminish herself so much to be with a dude who treats her like garbage. You're better than that, girl. Don't care how great his powers of magnetism are, you are above that shit. The two also had a brief flirtation in the 616 universe, but luckily that went nowhere. And at number 9, Mystique and Azazel. We're just working through all of the terribly mildly abusive relationships on this list apparently. Lucky for Hank Pym, he's not a mutant. So, Mystique and the demon Azazel. Now back in the day, Mystique learned that her husband was infertile, so she sought out another way to conceive a child. This is when this big red demon man stepped up, seduced her, tricked her into thinking that he was sticking around, and then pulled a total move on her and ditched her after they hooked up. Now apparently Azazel has impregnated a lot of women this way, and he never has any intention of sticking around. But one good thing did come from it, Mystique had Nightcrawler, so yay. I mean, hey, her one true love is Destiny, so didn't think that ship would work out. And you probably shouldn't ship it either, because like also he's very evil and ugh. Moving on to number 8, Jean Grey and Emma Frost. Now objectively speaking, this ship makes total sense. Look at them. Look at their powers. They would make such an amazing power couple. But they are also longtime rivals. They've got a lot of beef. Not only have they always been rivals from a power standpoint, Emma's strong, but Jean's just got that Phoenix oomph, people. But they are also two very confident, domineering women in their respective fields. And they've both had romantic relationships, and occasionally slummed it, if you will, with Cyclops aka Scott Summers. Now Emma and Scott had a psychic affair that Jean walked in on, and oh boy, that was scandalous. But I guess maybe that's what makes the ship work so well. Their history is palpable, it's messy, it's basically the foundation for a steamy realization where the two of them go from hating each other to not being able to be around each other for other reasons, if you know what I mean. But still probably not a good idea. And at number 7, Psylocke and Phantom X. Back to that dysfunction. Psylocke and Phantom X's relationship was disastrous to begin with. Featured in the totally darker Uncanny X-Force, the couple's romance began with a whole lot of manipulation. They constantly fought, which some critics have called writers out for in a sense that their domestic bickering was romanticized. Now Psylocke was also hooking up with a female incarnation of Phantom X's consciousness, Eva, so that complicates things more. And things just got really strained till it just blew up in their faces. I think this is a relationship most of us would rather just never revisit again. Returning to a hypothetical for this number, in at 6, the Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean throuple. Okay, so I am totally here for a Jean Scott Logan throuple. It would be so revolutionary, you guys. And yes, if it did happen, it probably wouldn't last, but come on. Come on, you gotta admit, it'd at least be incredibly compelling and entertaining. And it would be suggesting a more polyamorous approach to the relationships on Krakoa. So, to give you all some context on why this is a thing, after Dawn of X, in the first several issues of the X-Men stories after the relaunch of the series, we got to see a floor plan of the Summers residence. And Scott, Jean, and Wolverines are all right next to each other, with doors in between them. None of the other rooms have this, might I add. There have been several other subtle moments in which the three really seem to be bonding in a way that never really could have happened before thanks to the ceaseless rivalry between Logan and Scott that's endured for years, which was also primarily over Jean, and ideologies and other stuff too, but love is powerful guys. Anyway, there was another instance of bonding between Scott and Logan where the two seemingly teased each other and everyone kinda lost it, or rather the shippers shipping this pairing lost it. And in Powers of X issue 4, we got 10 sinister secrets, gossip gathered by Mr. Sinister, in which the 5th secret read, I quote, "He's the best there is at what he does. She's married with a kid. The husband knows exactly what's going on, but who is he to point the finger? He's up to much the same and more. Maybe this is just the new normal on the mutant island." Hello. So, will this be a thing? Is this something you guys want? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know your thoughts and feels. Moving on to number 5, Husk and Toad. Gross. Repulsive. Nasty. Yeah, these are words that people will often use to describe the relationship between Toad and Husk. Is that too harsh? I don't know, you guys tell me. So these two got together in Wolverine and the X-Men, and it was always a little bit unsettling. It's the Princess and the Frog thing. Get it? Aside from that, this relationship felt like it didn't really have much of a foundation. Sure, the two of them may have discovered a new sense of worth, which is great, but you know, the relationship itself felt more like a plot point rather than a proper narrative. And neither really grew from it either. Some argue that it was more of a satirical romance, but we would have rather seen something to root for emerge here and make us more compelled by these two characters because of it. Instead, it was just kind of like, meh. So maybe it's not terrible to ship them after all, but on the condition that they have a better story this time around. Moving on to number 4, Angel and Husk. Girl, what are you doing? Husk is often seen as the stereotypical crazy girlfriend, and while that does kind of suck, it also pans out pretty commonly in her romantic narratives. Case in point, her and Angel. There was a story in Uncanny X-Men that ran between issue 437 and 441 called She Lies with Angel. Guess where this is going. It was supposed to be a play on Romeo and Juliet, which the storyline actually took its name from. And it kinda took a weird turn. Although Romeo and Juliet is pretty superficially romantic if we're being honest, but that is a debate for another day and a whole other channel. Anyway, it gets real angsty, the two have sex in the air in front of Husk's mother and other team members and family members, and there is just a whole lot of dysfunction in general. Up next, number 3, Kitty Pryde and Iceman. Once upon a time, Iceman Bobby Drake and Shadowcat Kitty Pryde, aka the X-Men team leader at the time, knocked nasties. Or probably just kissed like they were on a PG-13 Disney show. The relationship was pretty awkward. So why is this ship kinda weird to keep shipping? Well, it's because Bobby's gay, and the two of them basically had zero chemistry anyway and are way better suited as friends. Honestly, he was probably going through a hard time repressing his sexuality anyway during this relationship, which explains why these two kinda felt like soggy paper towels together. Just two soggy paper towels, just no bueno. And at number 2, Wolverine and Squirrel Girl. In New Avengers issue 7, Squirrel Girl, who has become the new nanny for Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's daughter, runs into Wolverine, who is on the team. Now it's implied that they had a relationship, with Logan aggressively saying, "I thought we agreed never to see each other again." So yeah, I guess it did not end well between them. On top of that, in Wolverine issue 8, when Emma Frost goes into Logan's mind, she sees his sexual fantasies, which include Squirrel Girl, and it feels really dirty. Which is probably because she's still technically a teenager and Logan is, I'm sorry, how old again? Like a century old? Some fans have even speculated that this is technically statutory rape. But you know what, let's just move on to our next number and just don't ship it. Don't ship it. And last but not least, in at number 1, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Technically, thanks to a retcon, these two are not considered mutants anymore, but rather human mutates. But back in the Ultimate Comics, they're both mutants, and they're also brother and sister, and they're twins, and that is incest. Because they hook up in the Ultimate Universe. So I think that kind of sums up pretty well why these two made the top spot of our list. Twincest, revealed in Ultimates issue 3. It freaks Captain America out too, who Wasp then has to break it down to that they're in love with each other and are a couple, and it's just a whole awkward panel.
Number 10, Rogue and Iceman. One of the relationships that just didn't seem to work for many readers was the forced comic book relationship between Rogue and Iceman, which seemed to be inspired by the Fox X-Men films where the two were together. I'll admit that watching the movies I personally did not mind it, but of course in my heart of hearts Rogue and Gambit will always win out the day when it comes to both Rogue and Gambit's one true love and romance being each other. So it was very strange when the comics came to echo the films by trying to make Rogue and Iceman a thing. Because while in the movies Gambit might not be around to steal Rogue's heart, in the comics he still very much existed. Like, a lot. But instead it seemed that the Ultimate Universe had other plans that more followed in line with the Fox film franchise ships. After absorbing Gambit's powers and killing him, she ended up being able to touch people without hurting them. And so Rogue decided to touch Bobby. Because I guess that's what you do. Number 9, Richter and Wolfsbane. So admittedly these two weren't really so much a problem together, it was more when they had split up and then Richter was with his close friend and recent lover Shatterstar that things got kinda weird. Although they also had a kind of weirdness that was really well written and allowed us to tackle a bunch of different real world issues within the world of the X Factor series. So it was a good kind of weird really. It was a good kind of weird, but it was still weird. Reign intended to rejoin X Factor after leaving the X-Men and X-Force behind, only to find out that Richter is now with Shatterstar. And to be clear, I don't think Reign actually wanted to leave the X-Force, more she kinda got like kicked out of the X-Force. Sad. Reign returning was immensely offended by Richter having moved on, and by his gay relationship with Shatterstar. Reign actually claims that the child that she's pregnant with is Richter's, hoping to undo his gayness and win him back. The child was not Richter's of course, but was actually Harim Ari's, who had given up his life to save both Reign's and the life of their child. Eventually Richter finds out the truth about this, but in an amazing turn of events decides to still support Reign, despite the fact that she lied to him. And the two actually end up having a great heart-to-heart about just everything that's happened between them. Reign would even later team up with Shatterstar to defeat a demon following this ordeal. Like I said, it's weird, but it's good weird. Because I also love that like part of the resolution is like, let's team up together and fight a demon. Yeah, that's bonding. Me and my ex's partner. I think it's so cute. Two exes coming together to be friends. Yes. Number 8. Everyone? Everyone in a relationship with everyone. Welcome to Krakoa. A more unconventional, I suppose, kind of weirdness is going on right now in Krakoa that has got a lot of people talking. People are talking about this all the time in comments online. They're like, what is going on? With this melting pot of all the X-Men and mutant history being mixed together, it seems like all relationships are kind of existing at once in a way on Krakoa right now. Relationships are not as clearly defined here. Many characters seem to be weaving in and out of multiple relationships almost seamlessly, as though we are kind of welcoming in an age of polyamory, which I guess makes sense considering one of the guiding laws or principles on Krakoa is to make more mutants. How do you do that? Well, when a mutant and another mutant fall in love. An example of this is what we are seeing in the Summer House, where everyone has their own room, but you may have noticed that Wolverine is also bunkering down with the Summers. Jean's room in the house is actually situated between both Wolverine and Cyclops's, and both Logan and Scott also seem to be getting along better than ever, as though the love triangle has evolved to some kind of thruple, which I'm super into, I gotta be honest. But yeah, you should definitely you gotta check out these blueprints, because you can see it. It's like Jean and then like Wolverine and Cyclops on either end of her rooms. And of course, this is only one of many different examples that are out there in the comics right now. I personally find it refreshing to see these types of less mainstream, but very much real world sorts of relationships getting some love in literature, and especially with very mainstream publishers like Marvel, because yeah, I feel like we don't see that as often. So is it weird really, or is it just great? I want to say it's just great. That's my opinion. But you can let me know your opinion in the comments, because that's also, I like other people's opinions, whether or not they match my own. Let's all share opinions and be friends. You know what I mean? Number 7. Pyro and Jean Grey. In issue 9 of Marauders, this ship happens between St. John Allardyce's Pyro and Jean Grey's Marvel Girl. Of course, no need to panic about how or why this happened, as in actuality, it's not real. I'm not sure if it was Pyro himself who came up with the idea of Jean and him being shipped in this telepathic illusion, or if it was Emma, but I feel like since Emma Frost's the one creating it for Yellow Jacket with the help of the Stepford Cuckoos, it's likely that she is the one who decided to ship the two together. I also see her being like, who do I want to ship Pyro with? Jean, because I hate Jean. No, I don't know, they love each other now. They hate each other. I don't know what's going on. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list as much as I am loving bringing it to you, please be sure to reciprocate the love by giving this video a thumbs up. And I'm sending love back out to you right now, so thank you for doing that. Number 6. Cypher and Bay. Technically both of these two are mutants, but their relationship developed kind of suddenly, which is what makes it so weird and also so great. Once again though, this is another kind of charming and endearing weird relationship. Really, I just love weird things, I think, so I think many of them are charming and endearing to me. Most of them are. These two met during the Otherworld tournament in the Ten of Swords event, and their challenge where they faced off against each other was to get married? If you like me love weird stuff, by the way, and if you haven't checked out Ten of Swords yet, you need to do that. It is so amazingly weird. You gotta read it, it's so good. Both Cypher and Bay did end up following through with this challenge, both gaining points for their team. And since then, this arranged marriage between the Krakoan mutant and a Rocco mutant has stuck. Hey, if it works, it works. Number 5. Magic and the Death Commandos. So this is less of a full-blown relationship and more of a weird tactical move of Magic's in combat, but it caught me so off guard and made me laugh so hard when I read it that I thought I needed to share it with you, so here we go. Also, anything that allows me to celebrate the awesome mutant series we have going on currently makes me really happy, so I'm happy to bring it to you. New Mutants being one of those series. Here, Magic and the team are facing off against Sybil and the Shi'ar Death Commandos, a group of hired muscle basically. At one point, Magic confronts the team of Death Commandos in issue number 5 of the newest New Mutants run, volume 4, that started in 2019. She asks them if any of them want to make out, and when they reveal that they either aren't interested or they're too busy working to accept her offer, she tells them they made the wrong choice. Apparently, if they had agreed, then Magic would have been cool defeating them with love, but in this case, they'll be dealing with Magic and her soul sword instead. Yeah, they definitely made a bad choice. And fortunately, none of them happen to be human, which means that Magic doesn't have to worry about not killing them as per Krakoa's rules. Some very bad news for the Death Commandos. Number 4. Angel and Psylocke. These two had some super intense weirdness show up in their relationship, and it all went down when Angel as Archangel became the new Apocalypse. Psylocke was his love at the time, and against her will he managed to brainwash her into becoming his bride, despite the fact that he was already with Pestilence, who was also his baby mama. He was like, I'm with you, Pestilence, but I feel like I need another bride, you know what I mean? All the brides gather round, says Angel. You might think, well, hey, that's pretty awful and weird, but guess what? It only gets weirder. Psylocke was freed of Archangel's / New Apocalypse's control and attempted to appeal to him, to make him remember the goodness inside of him and revert him back to the hero he was. However, when this failed, she was forced to kill him. Angel, however, didn't die permanently though, but instead was resurrected into a new version of himself, becoming Angel once more. This new version of Angel was a complete refresh of the character, with all of Warren's past memories being lost to him, including the memories about him and Psylocke being in a relationship. His appearance was also back to his original look, except for some reason he still had his techno-organic wings. Because I guess techno-organic wings are way cooler than organic wings, but you know what's not cool? His and Psylocke's relationship, I suppose. Because they cut that part. Number 3. Mystique and Gambit. More of a moment in the comics than a full-blown couple, but still these two together were a weird time. Especially considering that Gambit is often seen as the true love of Rogue, and Mystique is, of course, Rogue's mother. Adoptive mother, but all the same. Already we got a super weird scene where a mutant student of Gambit's, known as Fox, approached him in the showers attempting to seduce him. Gambit manages, though it seems just barely, to resist her charms, and this is already awkward enough as this is a student-teacher relationship, so but it's made even weirder when we later learn that Mystique had actually infiltrated the Xavier school under the guise of Fox, who was never really a true student, as this was just a disguise devised by Mystique. Mystique later claims to have done this in an attempt to protect her daughter against Gambit, whom she didn't think was good enough for her daughter, but I gotta be honest, trying to seduce your daughter's partner seems like a really weird way at attempting to protect them. No wonder Rogue is always getting mad at her adoptive mama Mystique for meddling. She's like, this is weird, Mystique, don't meddle this way. This is not a normal mom thing, stop it. Number 2. Nightcrawler and Amanda Sefton. So this is a weird one, because before Amanda Sefton was known as Amanda Sefton, she was Jermaine Zardos, the daughter of Nightcrawler, admittedly his adopted sister, as Nightcrawler of course was not born into the Zardos family, but was merely taken in and raised by them. But still, it's pretty weird, they're still siblings. Even weirder, Jermaine had apparently always been in love with her brother, but when he was accused of murdering their other brother, Stefan, Jermaine refused to accept that Kurt had done so in cold blood, and sought him out to find out what was really going on. In truth, Kurt had actually killed Stefan, but only because Stefan had, at an earlier time, made Kurt promise to do so if he ever became too dangerous, which was what happened. Jermaine disguised herself as Amanda and did her best to make sure no one would recognize her, not even her brother Kurt, who grew up with her. This plan miraculously worked, and Amanda began to investigate and also date her brother. Oh my. What's going on? Number 1. Juggernaut and She-Hulk. Juggernaut isn't a mutant, and is usually more often thought of as an X-Men villain, but he has also teamed up with the X-Men from time to time, even sometimes seeing eye to eye with his stepbrother Charles Xavier, though usually that's not the case. She-Hulk, however, is not a member of the X-Men, nor has she ever been, and is not a mutant, but she is an acclaimed hero, which is one of the things that makes this relationship so weird. Well, that and the fact that it was a super random hookup. It all went down in Uncanny X-Men issue number 435 when She-Hulk was representing Juggernaut in the court of law. The ship was considered so abhorrent that years later, She-Hulk actually denied that it ever happened. In the 2005 She-Hulk series in issue 21, it was claimed that an alternate version of She-Hulk from Earth 721, who had been on vacation and impersonating her 616 counterpart, was actually the one who did the deed. And She-Hulk stands by that to this day. She's like, it wasn't me, it was an alternate version of me. I would never do that. But people are like, what's the real story, She-Hulk? What really happened? Number 10. Kitty Pryde and Star-Lord. This is one of those relationships where there was really no reason for these two to be together. Really. It's just so random. Star-Lord is cosmic, Kitty is an X-Men. I'm not saying the X-Men never go to space, because they definitely do go to space a lot, but it seems like these two only got together because they happened to meet one another in space once, then they began a long distance relationship, from there things got more serious, and eventually ended up with Kitty joining the Guardians, accepting Star-Lord's marriage proposal, but later deciding her and Peter just weren't meant to be because, well, he couldn't prioritize their relationship while also ruling Spartax. Which I get it, when you're ruling a world, it's probably hard to have a relationship, but I don't know, maybe like let your partner like help you with it? I don't know. Me trying to give relationship advice to superheroes. Number 9. Bishop and Deathbird. I mean, this was mostly just a weird relationship. What do these two characters have in common? Not much. Their relationship was pretty much constantly strained because they rarely ever agreed with anything, and also because Bishop is a hero and Deathbird is a villain, they would even fight against one another during the course of their relationship. Overall, it just seems odd that they tried so hard to make this work when it was obviously never going to. The one thing I will say that was cool that came out of these two being together is that there's an alternate reality where they actually stay together and they have a daughter, Aaliyah Bishop, who is pretty cool, unique, cosmic based, and overall is a badass character. So yeah, I like her. So there's a bit of a silver lining here, as with most weird, but not all weird couples. At least we got a silver lining, so that's nice. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show it by clicking like, subscribing, commenting, doing all the things. Also, if you love X-Men as much as I love X-Men, we got a playlist for that, so check it out. Number 8. Cyclops and Emma Frost. So actually, over the course of working on this channel, I have come to love and respect the relationship between Cyclops and Emma. I think I actually, over time, have just come to love and respect Emma more as a character. It's like the more I read about her and get to know her, the more I love her. Remember way back when I started on this channel and I said I could only imagine Cyclops with Jean? Nah, those days are gone. I have changed since then. But what is weird about these two together is when Emma kind of cosplayed as Jean and then had an affair with Cyclops in his mind. That was a pretty strange moment in their relationship, made only more weird by Jean psychically walking in on them. Like, imagine walking in on your partner to find them cheating on you with someone who is dressed up just like you. That would be an experience, right? Especially if you walked in on them in their mind. It's a lot. Although I'd also be like, why are you in my mind? This is an invasion of my mind privacy. Number 7. Bloke and his unnamed boyfriend. Well, there are lots of people that come to mind when we first talk about Marvel's first gay relationships and intimate moments in the comics. The very first gay kiss, I believe, came actually in 2001, but it's a little disappointing. Bloke is a new member of the X-Force who just happens to be gay. We meet him first in issue 117 of X-Force, and in issue 118 we get to see him with his boyfriend. But in the same issue, he also ends up dead. So, making it pretty weird that this is where Marvel chose to introduce a gay couple. I guess for some this might be seen as kind of cool because there wasn't really any showboating with Bloke's sexual identity. He was gay, but then he didn't make a big deal out of it, and it wasn't made a big deal out of in the comic. But on the other hand, introducing a gay character only to kill him shortly after revealing that he's gay, that's kind of a weird choice. However, you do have to give credit to Peter Milligan for even putting this in the comic and then for continuously showcasing gay characters in his work. So this wouldn't be the last gay couple that we'd see in X-Force, and likely actually pave the way for making those more long-lasting characters and relationships in comics possible. So it's weird, but it's also not weird. You know what I mean? Number 6. Storm and Quicksilver. Say what? When did this happen? Or more importantly, where did this happen? This is a relationship that comes to us from the universe of Earth 295, also referred to as the Age of Apocalypse. Storm and Quicksilver might sound like the weirdest couple ever on paper, but you have to remember that both characters were different in this universe. Quicksilver was much less of a brat here, as in Age of Apocalypse he lost his sister quite early on, and this was also a much more apocalyptic type reality, which meant more was demanded of him. Storm was still her badass self though. I don't think there's a reality that exists where Storm is not a badass. Number 5. Rogue and Sentry. This one is only half of an X couple, but it's so bizarre I had to bring it up. So you're welcome? Back when Sentry was retconned into existence, it was also heavily implied that he was Rogue's first. And all because he was the only one who could touch her. I have so many questions. And I also feel like we need to stop putting Rogue in relationships with people simply because they can touch her. Physical intimacy does not a relationship make. I know that it's probably been hard for Rogue not being able to touch those that she loves, but that shouldn't mean that she falls in love with someone just because she can touch them and they can touch her, right? Which is definitely what is implied happened here when the subject is brought up during Sentry's funeral and she runs off in tears. Poor Rogue. for so many reasons. Poor Rogue. Number 4. Husk and Angel. Husk and Angel are a couple that I have a lot of feelings about. The weirdest part of this relationship that most people point to is the age difference and the difference in experience between the two. Warren is a full-on adult and one of the original X-Men members. In other words, he's older. Whereas Husk is a teenager. I think she was like just 19 or 18, so technically an adult, but still pretty young. Still a teenager. So like an adult, but a teenager. Young adult. There's also the fact that Husk was this weird rebound for Angel where he claimed he was going to love her forever, but it didn't really last past Chuck Austin's run, and it's never really come up since, I don't think. He had just gotten out of a lengthy relationship with Betsy Braddock, who was going by Psylocke at the time. It was just an awkward relationship, and if you don't believe me, take a look at the time Husk and Angel made up after an argument by getting intimate in the sky above Paige's mom and the X-Men. Yikes. That was a thing that happened. Number 3. Stacy X and Angel. And if you thought Paige and Warren were weird, I have one that's even a little bit weirder perhaps. Stacy X is a mutant who can affect the way you feel, making you nauseous, dizzy, or even really good, using pheromones. She worked for a time at a brothel using her mutant powers. That brothel got attacked by an anti-mutant group and burnt to the ground, so Stacy X reluctantly at first decided to join up with the X-Men, who would help to confront the group that targeted her workplace. She ended up developing a pretty epic crush on Angel, to the point that although she knew he was already taken, she sent him a video of her jumping rope naked. This never really led to a full-on relationship, but it's so wild I had to include it. Also, apparently this is a thing that people do. People on Twitter told me this is a thing that people do. I'm not sure if I fully believe it, but apparently it happens. Also, I love Stacy X, but she is so weird. Like, who sends someone a video of them jumping rope naked? This is a real thing? This is a real thing? What's happening with the world? What are we doing with our lives? Stacy X must have some amazing inner confidence and self-esteem, and anyone that's done that to send those videos. I love that. I love that confidence, I will say. Love yourself, love your body, jump rope naked. I don't know. What are the takeaways from this list? Number 2, Madeline Pryor and Cyclops. I mean, I have to talk about this one. I have to talk about it. I don't have a choice. Madeline Pryor is the clone of Jean Grey created by Mr. Sinister so that he could engineer the perfect mutant offspring, or just the perfect mutant if you will, after Jean's apparent death. Cyclops would meet Maddie and fall in love with her because, well, she reminded him of Jean, probably, although for some reason no one ever thought this was super suspicious or weird that she was a one-for-one copy of Jean. Just a coincidence, they thought. Nothing to worry about, they thought. Well, turns out it was something to worry about when Jean Grey reappeared after Scott and Maddie had their first child together and were married, and Cyclops decided to leave his family to go adventuring with his fellow mutants once more. This ended up driving Maddie crazy, unlocking her true psionic potential and causing her to make a deal with demons. Because that's what happens when someone leaves you. She would go on to have an affair with Scott's brother Havoc and become a frightening mutant-based supervillain. So, not your typical fairy tale ending for these two. Number 1, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And if you want to get into more awful stuff from the universe from whence this relationship came, be sure to check out Worst Things from the Marvel Ultimate Universe. That's a series of videos we did, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happened. I got a lot more things to share with you. Yes, on the Earth of 1610, also known as the Ultimate Reality, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were a couple. And yes, they were still brother and sister. And it could be possible in this reality that Wolverine, who saw them getting intimate together, was even their father. It was probably still Magneto though, but it definitely doesn't make any of this better. It doesn't make it better. I mean, I don't know what you could do to make this relationship better. Either just don't have it happen at all, or have these two not be brother and sister. Or at least make it so they didn't know that they were brother and sister and this was some kind of awful, twisted mistake. That might help, but no, they knew. They were into it. People joked about it, and then it was confirmed as being a thing in the Ultimate Comics. On behalf of 1610, I'm very sorry about that. Number 10, Mystique. Wolverine has been around for a long time, so it's no surprise that this is a love interest I constantly forget about, but that exists. Mystique has of course also been around for a long time, and is possibly even older than Wolverine. So of course at some point in these characters' history, they had to have worked together and of course slept together. When it comes to Wolverine and Mystique, these two actually go way back, all the way back to the Wild Wild West. It was then that Logan and Raven seemingly first met, and even teamed up together. together. It could have been them against the world, but of course, what usually happens with Raven when it comes to romance also happened during her time with Wolverine. Ultimately, Raven betrayed Logan, putting herself first, and it was because of this that the two ended things, and on a pretty sour note. She also ended things by kicking him out of a moving train car, so yeah. Logan's memory isn't always the greatest, but something that he wouldn't soon forget was how untrustworthy Mystique was. Even to this day, he's like, "You suck, Mystique. Also, you're gonna be lonely because you're always betraying everyone." Number 9. Maureen. She might not be from the main continuity, but Maureen had such a profound and life-changing effect on Old Man Logan that even after she and their children together were tragically murdered by the Hulk gang, Old Man Logan never once forgot about her. He even later asks a returned loved, Mariko, to look out for Maureen, who herself, after more than a lifetime of tragedy and literally going to hell and back, is finally trying to live a normal and peaceful life. Mariko, that is, not Maureen, who is dead in Old Man Logan's timeline. Old Man Logan set aside some money so that Mariko could keep an eye on younger Maureen and ideally try to protect her moving forward, as he knew that if her life continued the way it had in his timeline, it would end in tragedy. He was like, "I just love her so much, I just want her to be okay." And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more Wolverine love interests, I'm pretty sure I could do 10 more. There's a lot of them out there. Be sure to let us know that you love this list by giving it a thumbs up. Can't give it a thumbs down because that doesn't exist anymore, so just thumbs up, please. What a world we live in where we can't dislike things. Number 8. Rose O'Hara. Rose was Wolverine's first love, and for most of his life was seemingly unrequited. In the Marvel Noir universe, she is also one of his main love interests. Rose is probably the reason why Wolverine tends to have a thing for redheads, actually, although that might be a foggier part of his memory and he might not always remember that. Honestly, at this point, I'm surprised that Logan can even remember what day it is or what his phone number is without having it written down somewhere. That's just how much he's had his brain and his memory scrambled. Rose was brought in from town to be a companion to young James Howlett, aka Kid Wolverine, when he was growing up on his parents' estate. Also, just to be clear, he wasn't known as Kid Wolverine, but you know, we know him as Wolverine now, so he was a kid. You know what I'm saying. Rose was also tasked with looking after James, as he was known for being a weak and often sickly child. Rose died tragically when she ended up trying to get involved in a fight between Logan and his childhood rival, who had returned years later, Dog. It was implied then, as she lay dying, that she perhaps also did have feelings for James at some point. Wow, what a time to find that out. Unlike many of Wolverine's other love interests, Rose has not yet returned from the dead. At least, not yet, anyways. Maybe later, who knows. A lot of them do, a lot of them come back to life. Number 7. Yukio. Yukio has been both a lover and a friend to Wolverine, as well as acted as the adopted mother of his adopted daughter, Emiko. Yukio first met Wolverine during her time working as an assassin for Clan Yoshida. Initially, she was Wolverine's enemy, as she actually worked for the head of the clan, Lord Shinjin, who wanted to shame and kill Logan. Yukio would develop an attraction to Wolverine, but at the time he was basically hung up on Mariko Yoshida, the daughter of Lord Shinjin, so nothing came of it. However, it was because of her feelings for Wolverine that Yukio would ultimately decide to help save Mariko's life later on, despite the fact that Mariko was kinda like her romantic rival for Logan's affections. Yukio is also known for being close friends with Storm and a possibly implied romantic interest of Aurora's as well. At least that's how I see it. I feel like maybe not everybody sees those implications. But I don't know, I think I would ship Storm and Yukio, just like I would also ship Wolverine and Yukio. And just like I would also ship Storm and Wolverine. It's a nice little triangle. Little love triangle there. Number 6. Silver Fox. Silver Fox has become a complicated character since her original story as Wolverine's lover. Silver Fox is a member of the Blackfoot tribe and is Canadian. When Wolverine met her, she had recently been widowed and as such began a relationship with Logan, who had recently been accepted into living with her tribe. Silver Fox, however, would tragically die at the hands of Sabretooth, Wolverine's arch nemesis, and a vicious man and a vicious mutant. Later on, however, this act would also end up being tied to Romulus, who apparently influenced Sabretooth and did a lot of brainwash shenanigans regarding the memories of her death, and who was believed to have been behind it. Wolverine would end up attacking the people of Mount Logan and blaming them for her death because Romulus had him brainwashed to believe that that's what happened, despite Sabretooth having taken credit for killing Silver Fox, and doing so in front of Logan. Silver Fox would also later seemingly return, but it's more likely that this version of her associated with Weapon X, Team X, and Hydra was actually some kind of clone or was an agent who was simply brainwashed and manipulated into thinking that she was the true Silver Fox. Yeah, Silver Fox became really complicated, but she used to be very simple. Number 5. Tiger. One of my favorite of Wolverine's romantic interests has to be Tiger, who is long known as one of the main crime lords of Madripoor. Before that, she was Jessin Hoan, who ended up being kidnapped by the Reavers and later saved by the X-Men. When Jessin learned that Madripoor crime lord Roche was behind the Reavers' attack, which had pretty much completely uprooted and dramatically altered her life moving forward, she dedicated her life to usurping and defeating him, taking up the mantle Tiger, or taking up the name Tiger really, and that's how we know her now. Wolverine would later learn of Tiger's true identity as Jessin Hoan and would pledge himself to her cause, eventually working as her personal bodyguard while in his patch persona. During this time, Wolverine would also become a somewhat casual lover to Tiger as the two continued to grow closer together. And I love them together, I just think they're so cute. Number 4. Itsu. Itsu was Wolverine's wife at one point many years ago when he was training with the Master Bando Saburo. The two fell in love, were married, and Itsu even became pregnant with Logan's child. For a brief time they were happy, until Logan accidentally stabbed a fellow member of the community with his claws. As a result, he was forced to leave, exiled, but when he went to say goodbye to Itsu, he only found her dead. Years later it would be revealed that Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier was actually the one responsible for her death, seemingly manipulated into killing her under Romulus's orders. Oh, Romulus, pulling all these strings and then just disappearing. Their unborn child was also stolen from Itsu's womb, and due to the child's mutant gene, which would also grant him a healing factor, survived. This child would grow up to be Akahiro, aka Daken, Wolverine's troublesome son, who was manipulated into thinking his father had killed his mother before abandoning him. And I'll just let you guess who made him believe that. If you can't guess, it was Romulus. Romulus did everything. And also nothing. Number 3. Jean Grey. Despite these two often not ending up together throughout stories told of them across various mediums, the fact remains that Wolverine will likely always carry a torch somewhat for Jeanie. Jean Grey and Wolverine are generally both never in the right place to end up together, and oftentimes their love story, if they do end up having one in whichever canon or narrative that we're talking about here, ends up being tainted with tragedy. The fact remains, however, that both Logan and Jean often count on one another to do what's right, and even turn to one another when they need someone to lean on in a time of need. Even when Jean is dead, Wolverine still has been known to fight for her honor, and when she has been alive, Wolverine has also been the one to kill her more than once. Needless to say, their relationship is way more than complicated. Number 2. Mariko Yoshida. At this point, Mariko has had a long and somewhat convoluted story, but initially in the comics she was simply the daughter of Japanese crime lord Shinjin Harada, who ruled over Clan Yoshida. Mariko would end up meeting Wolverine when the X-Men asked her brother, the mutant Sunfire, for help. While initially kinda scared of Wolverine, eventually the two would fall for one another, both admiring the differences of the other and also sharing a sense of kindness. Mariko would end up forcibly married off by her father and in a relationship where she was pretty badly mistreated. However, she felt compelled to stay in that marriage due to a sense of honor to her family. Eventually, however, Mariko would become free again and would even take over as the leader of Clan Yoshida in her father's place. For a time, her and Wolverine were engaged, with her not wanting to be married until she had removed all the criminal ties from her family. In the end, however, Mariko would die in a criminal gang war before she could end up marrying Logan. Mariko ended up poisoned, and Logan helped her death to be less painful at Mariko's behest by making it a lot more brief. Logan would punish her killer by visiting him every year and slicing off a piece of him until he died. This wouldn't be the end of Mariko's story though, as she would continue to pop up as the forced tormentor of Wolverine in Hell, and later resurrected as Gorgon's Scarlet Samurai. Basically another lover that we just couldn't leave dead, because yeah. I also love when Wolverine comes to Hell and is like, Alright, I'll free you though, Mariko. And she's like, nah, I'm good. Just remember me as I was. I don't want to go back. Like what? They could have had a happy ending there. Oh well. Number 1, Storm. Storm has always been a close friend of Wolverine's and is sometimes known for being his romantic partner as well, especially more recently in the comics. Depending on the reality we're talking about, there have also been universes where these two are firmly cemented as a romantic couple. Even in modern comics, with all the history they have shared as teammates, close friends, and romantic interests, these two's chemistry still manages to surface, and even today, they get pretty awesome flirty moments written in for them. Like during the Ten of Swords Otherworld tournament when the two faced off in a drinking contest against one another. The best thing about that, too, was that they both held their own and proved they could match each other. That's the thing about Storm and Wolverine. Both are incredibly strong, both as superheroes and as individuals, which is just a small part of why they work so well together. They're very, like, evenly matched, which I like.